My name is Nick Benny. I'm a therapist here at the Andrew Center. What you're about to see is a part of a series of videos that I'm doing where I interview different staff here in order to learn and show what it is that we do at the Andrew Center. We have a lot of wonderful, dedicated people working here, and I'm excited for you to be introduced to some of them. These videos can be used by clients, by staff, by community members, really anyone that is interested in learning more about the different ways that we try to serve our community. I hope you enjoy this video, and please see the other videos in this series to learn more. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jennifer Brashear, and I am with the Andrew Center Outpatient Competency Restoration Program.
Okay. And you're the program director over that?
Yes.
Yeah, so Outpatient Competency Restoration, that feels like a mouthful.
Yes, it is.
So if you don't mind just breaking down what that is.
Absolutely. So you'll hear a lot of acronyms with Andrew Center, and so OCR is what you most often hear us referred as. So OCR means that we help people in the community that have a criminal charge pending, and they've been deemed incompetent to stand trial by a criminal court of law.
Okay. And what do you guys hope to do at that point?
So Outpatient Competency Restoration is a program, obviously, that's held under the Criminal Code of Procedure in our state that gives someone the opportunity to essentially feel more emotionally, mentally, cognitively prepared to go into a courtroom if they're facing a criminal charge. So probably before 10 years ago, the state of Texas only had one option. So if someone with a mental illness was deemed incompetent to stand trial through that legal process, everyone went to a state hospital facility. And so that's mandated as a requirement that someone has to be competent in order to be prosecuted in our criminal courts. So about 10 years ago, the state of Texas released funding for a few of our centers, LMHAs, to have an outpatient alternative to that because the hospitals just can't keep up with the amount of criminal cases that we're seeing, and that trend just continues to increase every year. So what we're hoping to do is divert from the state hospital forensic list and give people the opportunity to be released from jail, to follow conditions of bond supervision in the community while they're taking these classes and getting mental health services, and that they are able to complete our program, return to the court for the court to then determine what's going to happen with those charges. So our primary goal is to divert from the state hospital waiting list. But our personal goal on a local level is to improve our community by giving folks in the criminal justice system more opportunities for mental health services and support while they're going through that process.
Okay. So first and foremost, this is more of a forensic oriented program. You deal specifically with folks that are involved in the criminal justice system. And as you were talking, the phrase, or what came to my mind, was what we see in films a lot, the not guilty by reason of insanity. Are those the folks that we're talking about, or not exactly? We're not there yet.
We're not there yet, but that's that could possibly be the next step for some of the folks that we help. So
okay.
Deemed incompetent to stand trial, that means that they can't even enter a plea yet. So they can't enter that option to say not guilty, guilty, or not guilty by reason of insanity. So our goal is that if they successfully complete that program, return to the court, and the judge agrees that they are now ready, they're now competent to proceed, then they can work with their defense attorney to determine what is the best legal strategy for them. So sometimes then we see them come back through after they've been restored. Now they can enter a plea. So sometimes not guilty by reason of insanity is something that happens in the following step after they leave our program.
Understood. Okay. So really, your program hopes to give people a chance to be in their best minds whenever they're going into court.
Absolutely.
Because, I mean,
walking into a courtroom, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think walking into a courtroom for any of us, it could be nerve-wracking. You know, just it's intimidating.
Yeah.
So if you have a chance to be a little more prepared for that and to know what's going to happen, what to expect, what the possibilities are, and have, you know, someone who they may view us as an advocate even at that point, even though the court views Andrews Center as neutral. You know, we build that relationship with our clients, and so hopefully that they do see us as an advocate and someone that, you know, going to be sitting there beside them through those hearings as well. So it is a court order program, Nick. So we like to get a chance before the court order comes through, if possible, to visit with the attorneys and the potential client, the defendant, before the competency hearing, just because I want to make sure that we have a good plan for them in the community. So once they do leave jail, do they have a safe place to stay? You know, do they have supportive family? What would they need in order to be successful in mental health treatment? So I do like to have their buy-in into our program in terms of, you know, hey, you know, this would be much better than going to the hospital or sitting in this jail waiting to go to a hospital. To, you know, just to make sure that, you know, this is something that they're willing to do, because it is going to be a court order. I don't want to create additional difficulties in their legal situation by setting up a program that they can't follow through with. So there are some requirements with that court order and with our OCR program that, you know, that we want to make sure ahead of time that they're prepared to do.
Okay. So I guess if you wouldn't mind giving me an idea of what those requirements are whenever you're, and I guess saying that, let me back up to make sure I'm understanding. Your program doesn't necessarily determine if a person is eligible for your program. It sounds like a judge or someone in the legal system decides John Doe is a good fit for this program and they're going to need to be enrolled. Is that correct?
Right. We're going to screen them and we're going to give our recommendation if they're a good candidate. But at the end, it's the judge that gets to decide. It's the judge's signature on that order and gets to make the final decision which avenue they're going to take for competency restoration. Is that going to be inpatient or that can be outpatient for them? So the first thing that we're looking at, and it's kind of built into that process, is that they have a mental illness. So under the criminal code of procedure, that's identified in order for someone to be deemed incompetent. They have a chronic and persistent mental illness that's going to last more than 12 months without treatment. However, it doesn't fit into some of the same check boxes that sometimes we see at Andrews Center. We're not limited, so to speak, on a diagnostic category. So as long as a mental illness is identified, it doesn't have to be what we call, you know, the big three for a priority population diagnosis. But a mental illness has been identified, and because of those symptoms, they're not prepared to go into the courtroom and participate in the criminal justice system. So that's kind of built in with that. But competency restoration that treatment has two tracks to it. There's a medication avenue, and probably the vast majority of our clients are going to require medication in order to restore to competency.
Sure.
The most common symptoms we see are signs of psychosis. So if that's schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorder, delusional disorder, or like one of the mood disorders with psychotic features. So most often medication is going to be required to restore them. So that's the first track. And so our contract requires that they are in front of our doctors within 7 days of that court order. So we're hopefully starting those medications week 1 to start stabilizing those symptoms. And so the second track of OCR is what we call legal skills training. So once psychiatrically the medications are addressing symptoms, now we're going to work on helping people feel mentally prepared. And it's like an educational, I joke about with our clients, it's kind of like going to law school. We're going to take classes, one-on-one that's going to teach you what to expect in the criminal justice system. And it's the same classes they actually give at the state hospital systems. We use the same curriculum they use. We're just able to do it on a one-on-one basis, and tailor it to their learning style, so to speak. So those are the two pieces that are required for competency restoration. The other thing that is unique with OCR for Andrews Center is that we have under our uniform assessment system, we're required to have level 3 or 4.
Okay.
Not that should mean anything to our clients, because we are going to conduct those assessments at intake and take care of that level of paperwork. But that's something that most people who've been in the criminal justice system, that just means they have higher level of needs, and that just comes naturally with what they're going through in life. So meaning we are treating the folks that are usually have very high needs regarding their mental illness.
And just to make sure I'm following along, you were saying, like, to be involved in regular Andrews Center care, you typically have to have one of the big 3: depression, bipolar disorder, or schizophrenia, or a similar illness. For your program, it is not so much that they have to have one of those 3 diagnoses. They just have to have some disorder that is going to significantly interfere with their ability to be present and engage in the criminal justice system. And it sounds like oftentimes how that ends up is going to be a psychotic disorder like schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorder. And it sounds like what you do for them, you provide 2 different layers or levels of care: medication assistance, not assistance so much, but medication management. And you were saying from the time that a client gets assigned to your program, they have 7 days to get in front of one of your providers, which feels like really fast care, all things considered. And then the second level of care is you're going to provide classes for them to help them understand this is what to expect whenever you set foot in that courtroom. And you mentioned that that's the same class that they have at that state hospital. But I mean, I know for myself, if it was me, if I had a choice, I'd rather be at home in a more comfortable environment, going through this process, getting myself fit and ready, as opposed to doing all this at the state hospital.
Absolutely. It is the same amount of time because the court order is dictated by the Criminal Code of Procedure. So if the offense is a Class A misdemeanor or any of the felony levels, it's 120 days. So we get 4 months with them. If it's a Class B misdemeanor or below, we get 60 days with them. So there is a clause in the law that would allow for a one-time 60-day extension if needed, if they're making progress and still able to restore. But for the most part, we're coming in quick. We're getting started really quick. And then 4 months flies by, and for the most part, people are ready in that amount of time with medication and training, and they're ready to go back into the court and now decide, what kind of legal strategy or what do they need to do to resolve that charge.
Absolutely. So at minimum, if I'm going to be in your program, it's probably going to be for misdemeanor, and I might be there for 60 days, 2 months, and maybe at the most, I'm looking at 4 months with the possibility of a 2-month extension. But oftentimes you're telling me that folks don't necessarily need that. They come in and they're restored, as you would say, after 2 to 4 months. So that is very quickly from start to finish.
Absolutely. And our goal is to, as we're going through this training, is to provide some, psychosocial training as well in terms of, what recommendations for, mental health services long-term. So our hope is that, there is a department at the Andrews Center that they're eligible for. Following our program, we can transition to, or if they have, other community options or resources in the community. Our hope is that we've provided some education on what this is going to look like, so that after they're off of the court order, now they can choose treatment for themselves. So what's the best fit, and with the goal of reducing that risk of recidivism. So if they're able to continue treatment beyond resolving that charge, hopefully those symptoms don't become, a factor in, future arrest, so to speak.
Right. And I'm just trying to put everything together in my head. It sounds like oftentimes an individual will come to you and they might not even be an Andrew Center client initially. They have to be brought into services and then enrolled into your program.
That is true. Our referrals come from multiple directions. Obviously, it has to result from a court order,
Right.
but sometimes we're hearing from jail staff. Hey, come take a look at this person. This is what we're seeing. So we get a chance. We may be going in the jail and seeing them early on, and then communicating with the attorney or with the state in that case to say, hey, they're exhibiting, signs that there could be a risk to be deemed incompetent to stand trial. So sometimes maybe it's the jail staff, maybe it's a family member that calls and says, my son, my brother, my husband, so-and-so has been arrested, and something wasn't right. What can you do to help them? Sometimes it's the defense attorneys calling us. Sometimes it's even the DA, the district attorney will call to say, hey, there's, we're looking at filing a motion for competency. Can you take a look at this case? But they can also be an Andrew Center client, Nick. So maybe they're already in services with Andrew Center on a different caseload, and something happens and now they have a criminal charge pending. And so sometimes we're hearing from their case manager, their service coordinator that, hey, they've got questions, would you mind talking to them, or so forth. So our referrals come from all different directions, which is fine by us, as long as that, like I said, I have to have a court order to put them on our caseload officially. But we will do OCR. If they're not a client of the Andrew Center at the time of referral, we will do our own intake, so they don't have to go through the Andrew Center screening, triage, and intake steps. They do allow us to do that, like I said, because we have some contract requirements with our level of cares, so that we can do that ourselves through the OCR. One of the clinicians, we can take care of that for them. And then, like I said, they may transition to a different caseload beyond OCR at Andrew Center later on, but they can start with us, or they can transfer from a different department to us.
Okay. Well, Jennifer, I appreciate you giving us the picture on this. I guess I just have a few questions just to make sure I'm covering my bases. If I want to get involved, or not if I want to get involved, but if I have been referred to your program, do I have to pay for it? Do I have to have a pay source?
Great question. We are fortunate at the Andrew Center to have a grant funded by the Health and Human Service Commission for the entirety of our program. So that covers the cost of their doctor's visits, the cost of their medications. If there's other kind of specialty training or assistance they need to be restored to competency, we are able to cover very often, could be, close to all their expenses during that time.
Wow.
Even if there's they need utility assistance while they're in our program in order to maintain safe housing.
Wow.
They need assistance with getting a cell phone so that we can stay in touch with them, things like that. So OCR is very fortunate to be funded by a grant that covers the cost of their treatment and some needs assistance as well, if necessary, during that period of time.
That's just so wonderful for me to hear that is something that is provided. And in this moment, I'm thinking of Sternberg's triangle, and we know that if I don't have electricity on in my house, and if I don't have running water, how am I going to be worried about anything else going on in my life if I don't have my basic needs? So it sounds like, if necessary, you guys might be able to help with that.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Happy to do it.
Jennifer, is there anything you feel like we missed? Anything you want to add to anyone who might be listening?
I would just say, if if you know of someone that you think could be a risk to be deemed incompetent to stand trial, the legal system is currently in their life. I encourage people to reach out to us at Andrew Center. It's easy to reach me at my extension when you call the Andrew Center switchboard at 903-597-1351. You'll hear the beginning of the message, and my extension is 7851. So that rings to whatever phone is in my possession at the time, my cell phone, my office phone, my computer, it comes to me. So as long as I'm not sitting in the jail without a signal, I can get those calls. The other way to reach us, a lot of times we hear from attorneys through email, and that's great too. We have a forensic services email box that's checked every day. So that email is forensic.services@andrewscenter.com. Or Jay Brashear at andrewcenter.com. Be happy to receive referrals, email, text, phone, any way we can help. We would like to have an opportunity.
Absolutely. So extension is 7831?
7851.
7851. Jay Brashear at andrewcenter.com, or the other one, I apologize.
That's okay. It's forensic.services@andrewscenter.com.
Okay. Forensic.services@andrewcenter.com. So if I know somebody, if I might be somebody that might not be ready to go to trial or to stand in court, I need to get in touch with you.
Absolutely. We'd love to have a chance to help.
Okay. Well, thank you again so much for educating me, certainly, and anyone who might be listening to this as well.
Thanks for the time, Nick.
All right. Thank you so much.